Hey everybody, this is Valerie Saunders. Welcome to another episode of Val's Vibe. I have with me Jim Nabors, NAMB President. And Jim, you've had a pretty exciting presidency, especially on the legislative front.
That's the first time anybody's told me I've had an exciting presidency.
Well,
Yeah, I've concentrated in a few areas, but the number one area has been government affairs. And particularly when I became president, when I was becoming president, I asked everybody, what is the number one thing we should be working on? And first thing out of everybody's mouth was trigger leads. So yes, the last year I spent most of the time, last 9 months, I spent most of my time working on this issue, not ignoring the other ones like education or membership, but this has been key, I think, to our success.
yeah,
Will be based on, do we actually get anything done? I think the other thing that's unique is that unlike previously when we had Congressman Richie Torres did a bill for us, and then the NBA went with Congressman John Rose's bill. This has been a united front throughout the industry. NAMB, the NBA, the ABA, the Independent Community Bankers Association, Brokers Action Coalition, almost every organization. In fact, today, you and I were on a call. The AARP has joined our effort because of the number of senior citizens that have been harassed by trigger leads. So, we know that it passed the House or the Senate unanimously. And that was expected because it passed unanimously last year. And at the time, we were the only ones that hadn't given up hope.
right.
Everybody else was talking about, well, next year we'll start again. And NAMB held out the belief that Chairman McHenry would let it come to a vote. And with both the continuing resolution and the National Defense Authorization Act. And of course, he didn't. So, but he's gone. We now have Chairman French Hill, who's overseeing the Housing Financial Services Committee. And it's been a whole new ballgame for us.
Right.
Again, it did, like I said, pass the Senate unanimously. That Senator Reid, who spoke at our lunch conference just a little over 2 months ago, said he would get it done, and he has. And Congressman Rose, who followed him 3 speakers later, said basically the same thing. And I think we previously had done, well, the last time you and I had talked was the day that it passed the House Financial Services Committee 46-0.
Right.
So now it's time for House Resolution 2808. Time for everybody to get the vote on it.
So we heard towards the end of last week that it is on the calendar for the week of June 23rd. So what happens now? Like, what are we waiting for?
Well, the question is, and there's some debate on whether it's going to actually be voted on the 23rd. And I'm truly of the belief the sooner the better. Different groups are looking at different calendars. We're talking to different people. Our people are talking to maybe one person in Rose's office. Somebody else is talking to somebody in French's office, or French Hill's office, to find out exactly when's this going to hit. We know the soonest it could hit is at 6:30 on Monday, the 23rd, because that's when they actually get called. They get called into session at noon, but they don't actually vote on anything till 6:30 because Monday is kind of like a travel day.
Right.
So we are under the impression it might be Wednesday or Thursday, but I like those people that are throwing out those positive vibes that it'll be get voted on the 23rd. And, you know, by going through the House unanimously, or the Financial Services Committee unanimously, you know, Congresswoman Kim had an amendment to require a study on
Text messages, I think.
text messages and how they're affected. And then she withdrew it. But it is in the bill. So there will be a difference between the Senate version and the House version. They're both 4 pages long, but the wording is just a little different. So the decision will have to be made, and the difference is that the study is in there.
Is the effective date the same between the two?
Yeah, I think that's not a major, you could correct me if I'm wrong because you've been in as many meetings as I have, but I thought they pretty much had the same lag time between when they were signed by the president and when they took effect.
Okay.
Now, if not, that will be another issue for them to negotiate.
Right. Well, I'm gonna look this up while I ask you this next question.
Okay.
So let's presume that the House passes the bill on Monday. We'll be totally optimistic, and they go in there at 6:30, and by 7 the bill's voted on. So
And-
what happens after that?
And by
Especially
7:30, we'll all be at the bar.
Okay, so 7:30 p.m. bar, and then what happens?
What happens then? Then
Yeah.
they got to take a look at the two bills and see, okay, what are they mirror and what are they different, and how are we going to make the adjustments on it? Okay, it could be something simple. The House bill calls for a study in 18 months on trigger leads and text messages. Okay, is that done separately in the Senate, or do they conference together and come up with one clean bill and then have to both go back to both the Senate and the House and say, okay, this is the final version and get passage? Okay. It is strange that, you know, this originally, and I think we've talked previously, Congresswoman Kim was looking for a 2-year delay before the bill took effect, so that the credit bureaus had time to change and update their computer systems. And it was like, during those 2 years, they'd still be able to continue selling trigger leads. And it became 18 months, and then it became 16 months, and then 12 months, and 6 months. So there will be some time lag between, to give the credit bureaus time in order to shut the sale of trigger leads off. But the most important thing is that we get it done so that we know, all right, this unethical practice will be coming into an end, and people are going to have to start looking at, if they were living off trigger leads, what am I going to do now? And again, I've always, you know, I say, hey, join NAMB. Take some of our classes. Take our, you know, join a committee that's going to help you learn to develop referral sources. You know, there's so many other things that our strategic alliances, the 38 strategic alliances we have with companies that will help them actually do a better job. But that's once it gets passed, and then they decide, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and boom, then of course it still has to go to the president. And I don't think President Trump would be not signing a bill that was pretty much unanimously approved in both houses.
Right.
So we feel very confident on that. So, but as of today, as of when you post this, it's not done. So we still need everyone's help. We need them to reach out to their congressman, congresswoman, and say, we need you to support House Resolution 2808. And I honestly, Valerie, I don't know how that's done, so maybe you could tell us, how does somebody do that?
Sure. So, first off, to answer the question of the expiration or the start date, they're both 180 days. So basically, the credit bureaus would have 6 months to figure it out, how they're going to comply. But as far as what somebody does to be able to reach out easily to their legislators, is you would go to our website, namb.org, and click on advocacy and then call to action. And the very first item is our current call to action. It does cover both HR 2808 and Senate Bill 1467. I probably need to go in here and make an adjustment to remove the Senate part.
Right.
Since we've already passed it. So I'll actually do that before I post this.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah. And then they just click the button, take action. They input their name, their cell phone number, and their address, and it will take them directly to their House members. They can either use our existing language that we wrote for a call to action, or they can completely type their own.
Right.
Whichever they prefer, or they can even modify ours,
Right.
whatever they want. And then just hit the button and it'll immediately send it to them via email. You can also, as we know from Director Pulte, he's very active on X, formerly
Yes.
Twitter. You can also post on Twitter. All the legislators have Twitter/X accounts. So you could post directly on their pages if you want to do something that way as well.
Right. And you know what? And when we talk about it, I know a lot of people were sitting there going, well, it's going to go. So, why should I waste my time? One, it's not going to take that much of your time, but two, they like actually hearing on this. To have a congressman talk about the fact that, he got 1,500, emails on trigger leads.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe 1,200 of them came from us, and they were all using the same standard, same standard form, the form, that you design, but still, they're hearing from different people. They're hearing from people who actually get to vote for them, because the way our system is set up, I don't put in my information and it gets sent to a congressman from Nevada. It's going to go to Matt Miller in Westlake, Ohio, because he's my congressman. And that's the great thing about it. So, and then of course, they'll get a response back saying, hey, we received your email on this topic and are looking into it, or, yes, we will be supporting it. But I think it's key to make sure that our members and anyone else that's involved in this industry reach out. You don't actually have to, maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. You don't actually have to be a member of NAMB to use that advocacy.
No.
Just all you have to do is be interested in what we're doing.
Yes.
So if we want everybody to be a member of NAMB, but more importantly on this issue, it's more important that we get more people involved.
Right. So I know that, so what happened, so with trigger leads, so the vote happens.
Yes.
What is the process to sort of reconcile the two bills together with the Senate?
Again, there's been some talk about a couple different ways that it could do it. The big way is they go to conference. The Senate picks a couple people on the issue, the House picks a couple people on the issues, and they meet and hammer out a final version of the bill, and then it goes back to both houses and gets reintroduced. This is not, it's not rocket science, and we're not deciding on how much money to spend on an aircraft carrier here. We're deciding on trigger leads, which one bill's already passed unanimously, the other one passed the committee unanimously. Every Democrat, every Republican voted for it. We feel really good is going to go pretty close to unanimously through the House. So the other option is like the chairman get together and go, okay, what do we need to do? Like maybe the Senate introduces another piece of legislation that is separately an 18-month study on texting for trigger leads.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I'm keeping good thoughts that they go with that version. But, you know, also the two committee chairmen can get together, you know, which would be, in this case, it would be Chairman French Hill, and in the Senate, it would be Banking Chairman Tim Scott, and work out, okay, how are we going to get this done? Because like I said, no one's really opposed to this. So what's the easiest way for them to get it out of the way so that they can spend their time working on the other issues? And I think that's why it does have a shot at Monday night, because next week could be devoted to whether it's cryptocurrency or the other, you know, Medicare or the other issues that don't directly affect housing, and that maybe there's going to be some disagreements over. So why not get the easy thing off the plate first?
Right.
So,
So I would say probably best case scenario, we're looking at first quarter in 2026 for this legislation to go into officially go into effect.
well, let's see. July, August, September, October, November, December, January. So you're right. It'll be in the first quarter. So, but usually most bills that pass have 90 days before they take effect anyhow,
Yeah.
you know, depending on what the bill is. So this gives them an extra 3 months to work out their issues. I know you'll edit this part out, but my suggestion is I have a grandson who's very good technology wise, and I'm sure he could fix this in about 10 minutes. When they were originally proposing they needed 2 years, and they're like, your grandson must be really, really smart. I go, yeah, he's almost 4 months old. And they're like, so you're not being serious? I go, just as serious as you are that you need 2 years.
Right.
That you have to have 2 years. Yes, he can get it done in 15 minutes. So
yeah,
if we were allowed to let him play with the computer.
Yeah, I would presume the 2 years maybe had something to do with like pre-existing contracts they have with the folks they're selling the trigger leads to or something. But yeah, I mean, I almost envision like a big giant switch. Just flip it over.
Well, I kind of looked at it the fact that I think their reasoning was they're thinking, okay, when they put that 43% debt ratio in there, but they gave Fannie and Freddie time to make adjustments to their systems.
Right.
You know, but that's a little different than turn off the box that says sell this person that has no idea who you are information to this third party. To me, that is something, and you know what a technology expert I am. I probably could figure that out on how not to turn that switch on, or if it's on, how to turn it off.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's the next step. And then the coalition, you know, us as not only NAMB on its own, but the coalition will move on to some other issues. I think one of the good things that's been is establishing a working relationship with people. You know, we are always going to disagree about things, but there are some things that, and this is a prime example, that we all agree on.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, we have VA issues coming up. We all agree on. You know, the VASP. Everybody in the industry agreed on it. So why wouldn't we work together?
Right.
And I have a saying, Mr. Farrell, our incoming president-elect, reminds me of, Jim, you said it doesn't matter who gets the credit as long as the job gets done. I'm like, yeah, ultimately, yes. does it get done? Do trigger leads come to an end? There's enough room for everybody to take credit, and honestly, yes, everybody will take the credit. Say without me, it wouldn't have got done. Well, without everybody, it wouldn't have got done.
Right.
But I'm hoping that we will continue to see that same working relationship on surviving spouses, on the VA Home Modernization Act, allowing reverse mortgages. Congressman Flood and Congressman Cleaver working together on affordable housing, not eliminating the AMI, but moving it back from 80 to moving it to 100 or now even 130%. Or they say that Director Pulte could eliminate LLPAs to bring down rates. But then other people say, okay, it'll bring them down for the short term, but then the bond market's going to adjust it back up. But these are all issues that I think the entire industry sees this is a valuable to not only NAMB members, but to home buyers. And I think that's why we're united on it.
Yeah. And just as you're rattling all those things off, it's important to note that once the issue of trigger leads, knock on wood, isn't an issue any longer, NAMB's work on advocacy will continue, because you, in about 30 seconds, rattled off about 10 more issues. So,
and I left out, because I don't want to pick on the credit bureaus too much, cost of credit.
Yeah.
You and I went and met. We met with the FHFA, and what was on our list?
Yeah, cost of credit.
Cost of credit. Wasn't evidently, spreads up. And, the director was talking about, how did a credit bureau go from $40 to $100?
Mm-hmm.
But I want to pick on the credit bureaus right now, because I want to wait till we get this bill passed.
Right, right.
But, when NAMB has met, when the board was meeting just as a group, not formally, but informally, I'm like, okay, well, what's next? Which one is in our priority? Which one's next? We can work on all 4 or 5 of them at the same time, but which one's next? And what does the coalition decide what's next? And I have the feeling that if Director Pulte thinks it's the cost of credit, maybe that's next.
Yeah.
While we're working on that, maybe if Congressman Flood and Congressman Cleaver decide it's affordable housing and making adjustments to the AMI, maybe that's going to be next. So we can multitask.
Yeah, that's what we've done for
51 years.
51 years now. So we can multitask for 51 more.
So,
well, thank you very much. We will do another one of these, hopefully sooner rather than later. Once
after it passes?
Yeah, after it passes. And then we'll do another one to sort of talk about your successes of your presidency.
Oh, my success. Okay, well, I'll start working on digging up some suggestions once possible successes.
Sounds good.
So,
all righty. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jim. I know you're going back to Washington, D.C. next week. So thank you for all you're doing.
For TFAC.
Yes, yes. So thanks for all that you're doing for NAMB's members and the industry. We greatly appreciate it. And we'll see everyone again for another episode of Val's Vibe. Thanks. Have a great day.